Raise your prayer.
God, grant me serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom
We're
to
going to
live.
start off with the backbone of AA, which to me is self-searching. I'll ask y'all a question. Keep that up there. Who's cheating who? Okay, very quick. We're gonna get some insight on it. Here's a big word. If. If you have decided decided you want something different, you gotta do something different. If you have decided you want peace, I mean, y'all had peace of mind before you got here. And the list goes on. To me, I want to be free on the inside. Now, you can act like you don't want to be free. And you can play the role of a fool if you want to. Trying to fool everybody else. But inwardly, you're playing the role of a fool. You know what I'm saying? But what I want to say is, it's personal. And it's simple. And it's a personal choice. And what it don't say, what our reading don't say, if your mama has decided, if your daddy has decided, or somebody else has decided that you need this new life, how many of y'all need a new life? Okay? What I want to start off talking about is the gift of desperation. I'm going to go to the big book, page 28. I want to ask you, is it your turn? Has the time come in your life for you to be willing to turn your life around? I always like to do this too. We're talking about reality. We got a born date, and we got a dead date. We got a dash in between. And that dash represents your scorecard. And one of these days, that dash is going to end. All y'all agree with that?
Yes, sir.
Does anybody know when it's going to end? Every human being on the face of the earth is a heartbeat away from leaving this earth as we know it. Now that's reality. Now you can act like it don't exist, but it's still reality. Just like you can act like there's not a light side, and you can act like there's not a dark side. And you can try to convince somebody else that you don't believe it. But the truth of the matter is, you're playing the role of the fool. Y'all agree with that?
Yes.
So the truth of the matter is, the light side exists, or the way our book puts it, the father of light. We got the power of darkness. You can act like these two natures don't exist, but the truth of the matter is those two natures exist. And one of these days we're going to leave this old world, and our scorecard is going to read what it reads. Now, if you want to keep a middle finger attitude for the rest of your life, you have the opportunity and the privilege and the choice to keep that middle finger attitude. Y'all believe that?
Yes.
And the middle finger attitude is like a mindset. It's like rebellion. It's like having a rebelling spirit. So on the second paragraph on page 28, it says, we in our turn sought the same escape with all the desperation of drowning men. You know what that means? We in a trap. Are you trying to escape the traps of the dark side? Ask yourself that question. We in our turn sought the same escape with all the desperation of drowning men. What seemed at first a flimsy reed has proved to be the loving and powerful hand of God. A new life has been given us, or if you prefer, if you don't like the hand of God, let's just call it a design for living that really works. Make sense? What I know about the design for living, from every good design, there is always a chief architect and builder. Y'all believe that?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So when you believe in this design for living that really works, when you help somebody else, you're going to receive your help. But until you start helping somebody else, it's going to be hard for you to receive the help, at least in the manner that you really want to receive it. Does that make sense? So the gift of desperation. We got a circle of influence. Me, y'all believe we're influential people. Who made us to be influential? Our Creator. You didn't create yourself. Our Creator created us to be influential people. And in our circle of influence, we've got family, friends, and society. Now, what I want to do is go to page 82 in the big book. Last paragraph. We want to talk about habits. We got bad habits or unhealthy habits versus good habits. In the last paragraph it says the alcoholic is like. We read this in every meeting. Our stories just close in a general way what we used to be like. The alcoholic is like a tornado. How about this? How about the self-centered human being? Let's just umbrella everybody in there, okay? To a certain degree. The alcoholic is like a tornado roaring his way through the lives of others. Facts, reality. Hearts are broken. Facts, reality. Sweet relationships are dead. Facts, reality. Affections have been uprooted. What's the next statement in the book?
Selfish and inconsiderate habits kept the home in turmoil.
Selfish and inconsiderate habits kept the home in turmoil. So we developed some bad habits at an early age. And it kept the home in turmoil. And so the dark side was using us and was roaring through us to destroy the people within our circle of influence. There we are right there, first circle of influence, family, friends, and society. I'm gonna ask you a question. How much money have you squandered in your lifetime? Who's cheating who? Have you deprived yourself by feeding that selfish, self-centered nature? Have you deprived your family of their worldly goods? What about your friends? What about society as a whole? When I look back on my life, I realized that I was used as an instrument, not just to take food. I got 3 daughters and 1 son. I took food off my family's table. I took clothes off my kids' back. I took shoes off my kids' feet. I took vehicles out of their driveways. And the list goes on and on and on. Anybody can increase the list, can't they? Well, what about being a spiritual thief? How many times have you been used to steal somebody's peace of mind? You ever been used as an instrument to steal your mama's peace of mind? Your daddy's peace of mind? Grandma's, grandpa's, aunts, uncles, nieces, nephews, children, brothers and sisters, and the list goes on. So how many of y'all like being able to, like seeing that you were used as an instrument to steal somebody's peace of mind? Keep your mom and daddy up all night long. Any of y'all ever kept your mom and daddy up all night long? Now, none of us can enjoy seeing this, but if we don't see it, how are we going to correct it? And see, when we were stealing somebody, not only that, we was killing them from our wrongdoings. And then the wrongdoings of others were killing us from the inside out. Does that make sense? And we were destroying them through our anger, which turned into a resentment. I mean, y'all got some people mad at you. Y'all got some people mad at you?
Yeah.
Why are they mad at you? How about that? Because of the choices we've been making. True or false?
True.
And in reality, we mad at some of them too, aren't we? Aren't we? Because our expectations don't get met. Or we shout from the hilltop, it just let me do it like this. Just ain't right. It just ain't right. How many of us hold on to it just ain't right? When you look at step five says admitted to God, to herself, and to another human being the exact nature. I'm going to show y'all a little bit about the nature. many of y'all believe that the dark side wants us to be angry? How many of y'all believe the dark side wants us to be resentful, bitter, full of self-pity, depressed? Anybody else want to add to the list?
Unhappy. It wants us to be unhappy.
Unhappy.
Anxious. Dishonest.
I'm gonna put dishonest at the top. Wants us to be dishonest with ourselves. Wants us to have these worldly priorities, worldly ambitions, worldly objectives, worldly values, worldly desires. That's why motives play a big part in our deal. Helps us distinguish between the truth and the false, the good spirit and the bad spirit. Many of y'all believe the dark side wants to keep us in bondage, wants to keep us in a self-constructed prison. How many of y'all believe that? So what happens is, when we feed our mind anger, because we're afraid we're not gonna get something, fear is always lurking below the surface, it seems like. And then we let the sun go down on our anger, and the dark side gets a foothold on us, and then we get resentful, which means we develop a grudge list. How many of y'all believe the dark side wants us to have a grudge list? And then we get more bitter. We start sinking further and further into the pit, to that self-pity. Here comes the depression. We're unhappy. And what we do is, because of the choices we feed in our mind, we become what we feed on. How many of y'all believe that? If you feed your mind all this poison, y'all agree this is poison?
Yep.
When you feed your mind all this poison, you become it. And as you become it, you transmit it. And when you transmit it, you set yourself up to be a receiver of it. And as long as you're feeding your mind all this poison, then that dark side of that nature is going to control you to the bitter end of your scorecard. How many of y'all believe that's reality? And we're transmitting it here, which means in reality, we become an agent or a representative of the dark side. So if you want to keep depriving yourself, and if you want to keep depriving your mama, your daddy, and all, we got to do something different. Which is where the 12-step program kicks in. And so the backbone of the 12-step program is breaking old habits and developing some new habits. So we start taking our inventory. We start doing some self-evaluation. self-examination. We start doing some self-searching. We start meditating on positive things. We start praying, thy will be done, instead of grant me my wishes. You got something?
Yeah, Nick added alcohol.
All right, here's what I want to do. All right, the desires come from our instincts. Who gave us the instincts? Three basic instincts. All right, let's go to 12 and 12, page 42.
I agree with you. I'm just.
Yeah, that's good. That's good.
Know your opinion on
Yeah, right. See, and everybody's got their point of view. But see, here's the deal. We're either going to have a worldly perspective or a spiritual perspective. You see what I mean?
Yeah, and I just want to bring it up because, addiction's becoming, it's a big topic in the medical world.
Right. That's right.
Genetics and,
Okay. In the medical world, we might go there in a little bit. Okay.
I don't want to take you there. I just want to.
No. Let's go to page 42 and let's read the first paragraph on page 42 in the 12 and 12. All right, now I'm going to ask you something. Did you give yourself your instincts? Did you give yourself your mind? Did you give yourself that craving? See, God fashioned us and created us to have a craving inside, and we misused it. God created us to have freedom of mind, and we misused our freedom. In simplicity and in depth by misusing our God-given instincts. Let's read the first paragraph. Page 42. Somebody read it.
Michael Alcoholic.
Michael.
Creation gave us instincts for a purpose. Without them, we wouldn't be complete human beings. If men and women didn't exert themselves to be secure in their persons, made no effort to harvest food or construct shelter, there would be no survival. If they didn't reproduce, the earth wouldn't be populated. If there were no social instinct, if men cared nothing for society of one another, there would be no society. So these desires for the sex relation, for material and emotional security, and for companionship are perfectly necessary and right, and surely God-given.
Okay, so these desires that come from our instincts are necessary for our existence. Okay, we gotta have it. But what happens is when we start operating on instincts and instincts alone, we start misusing our God-given instincts. And when we misuse them, they become our liabilities and not our assets. And they were designed to be our assets. And here's how powerful they are. Now think about what we're trying to do. Our objective in the fifth step is to expose the exact nature of our wrongs. And what we've been doing is looking at the wrongs that other people do, and we've been looking at the instrument instead of the source of power working through the instrument. Does that make sense? We're the instruments. We're the instruments for both spiritual forces in this walk of life. And that's reality. You can accept it or reject it in your mind, but it don't change the fact that it's reality. That makes sense? Okay, now here's how powerful they are. I want y'all to see how powerful these instincts are. And I'm going to stop us when we get to a certain point. Read part of the next paragraph. Here's how powerful these are.
Michael Alcoholic. Yeah, these instincts, so necessary for our existence, often far exceed their proper functions. Powerfully, blindly, and many times subtly, they divide us, dominate us, and insist upon ruling our lives.
Okay, stop right there. Now, who do you think wants to drive us, dominate us, and insist on ruling our lives in a perverted way? How's he gonna do it? When we choose to misuse our God-given instincts. And we started choosing to misuse them at a very young age. When you took your first drink, one of these instincts was involved. How many of us wanted to fit in the social world? How many of us, it gave us some kind of false sense of security? So it's not a question of security or faith, it's what or who are you putting your faith in. And in today's society, nearly all our talk highlights man's pride and what I've accomplished, what I've accomplished, what I've accomplished. Don't you know what I've accomplished? Because of the priorities, the ambitions, the objectives, the values, the desires, the motives from a worldly point of view. So we got the worldly point of view versus the spiritual point of view. All right, read the rest of the paragraph.
Our desires for sex, for material and emotional security, and for an important place in society often tyrannize us. When thus out of joint, man's natural desires cause him great trouble, practically all the trouble there is. No human being, however good, is exempt from these troubles. Nearly every serious emotional problem can be seen as a case of misdirected instinct. When that happens, our great natural assets, the instincts, have turned into physical and mental liabilities.
So we start letting our emotions control us. Not the good emotions, but the emotions from the dark side. In 12 and 12, on page 47, calls them erratic emotions. On page 62, it calls them downed up emotions. And on page 78, it calls them bedeviled emotions. Okay? Now, look at the top of page 43, where it says, we got to go back in our life, where it says we want to find exactly how, when, and where our natural desires have warped us. What those natural desires have done is warped our minds. Does that make sense? By discovering what our emotional deformities are, we can move toward their correction. But without a willing, what did it say?
Willing and persistent effort to do this.
Without a willing and persistent effort to do this, finish it out.
There can be little sobriety or contentment for us. Without a searching and fearless moral inventory, most of us have found that faith, which really works in daily living, is still out of reach.
The faith that really works in daily living is still out of reach. So we want to uncover and discover and discard this side and replace it with this side. But what we've been doing is feeding this side all this poison. And we're caught up in a vicious cycle. And we don't know how to get out. Now go to the last paragraph on page 44, and let's talk about this disease concept from a spiritual perspective, not from a worldly perspective. Because the intellectual world will diagnose us as the list is, and the truth of the matter is, we're going to try to keep it simple. We're either going to be an agent or a representative for that side, or an agent or representative for this side, regardless of what kind of worldly label this side wants to put on us. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
We either want to be an agent or a rep for this side within our circle of influence, or we're going to be an agent or a rep for this side within our circle of influence. That's keeping it simple to me, but it's very deep. All right, now, let's talk about, we're fixing to read how powerful our eyes are. Read that last paragraph.
Alcoholics especially should be able to see that the instinct to run wild in themselves is the underlying cause of their destructive drinking. We have drunk a drought We have drunk to drown feelings of fear, frustration, and depression. We have drunk to escape the guilt of passions, and then we have drunk again to make more passions possible. We have drunk for vainglory, that we might the more enjoy foolish dreams of pomp and power. This perverse soul sickness is not pleasant to look upon.
What kind of sickness?
Perverse.
Perverted soul sickness. So let's call the disease what it really is. And let's quit saying that we got some kind of special disease. Let's call it a perverted soul sickness. Can we do that? Because if you're feeding on this stuff, you got gangrene of the soul. That's what I believe. I believe that right there is gangrene of the soul. And this perverted soul sickness is not pleasant to look upon. You know why? Those instincts on rampage balk when they get investigated because they want to stay in hiding. We're reading how it works, and some of these we balked. Well, what was balking was the source of power inside us. Does that make sense? Okay. Read the rest of it.
This perverse soul sickness is not pleasant to look upon. Instincts on rampage balk at investigation. The minute we make a serious attempt to probe them, we are liable to suffer severe reactions.
Okay, but see the pain, but we still got to get free. Okay. We may suffer some severe reactions when we start probing the dark side. But what we're really trying to do is expose them. All right, now go to page 65, second paragraph. All right, here's what I want to say. Here's what I believe with all my heart. We read in how it works that we are naturally incapable. So the natural man don't have the ability to get honest with himself without the spirit of life. How many of y'all believe it? The natural man does not have the ability. We're naturally incapable, which means we were born in the natural. We started developing those bad habits. And so the second paragraph on page 65, it says, since most of us are born with an abundance of natural desires, it isn't strange that we let these natural desires far exceed their intended purpose. But when they, meaning the natural desires, drive us blindly, or we willfully demand that they supply us more satisfactions or pleasures than are due us, that is the point at which we depart from the degree of perfection that God wishes for us here on earth. That's the measure of our character defects, or if you prefer, of our sins. Call it whatever you want to. It's unhealthy for us. So, what's been your supply line? Haven't you been trying to fill in this God-shaped hole in the natural realm by misusing your God-given instincts? Drugs, alcohol, more pleasures, more passions, moments of pleasures. They're short-lived. They're not permanent. It's all temporary. Now go back to page 50. First paragraph. By now, the newcomer, hopefully we're getting there, has probably arrived at the following conclusions. That his character defects, or if you prefer, your sins, have been the primary cause of our drinking and our failure at life. So what we got to do is tear out the old foundation and get on a solid foundation. 12 and 12 calls it the bedrock. In the carpenter world, we call it the pad. Y'all got that? So we want to tear it out, the faulty foundation, and build a solid foundation. Go to page 21. Third paragraph. This goes back to our perspective. Somebody read the third paragraph.
Like alcoholic. But upon entering AA, we soon take quite another view of this absolute humiliation. We perceive that only utter defeat are we able to take our first steps towards liberation and strength. Our admissions of personal powerlessness finally turn out to be firm bedrock upon which happy and purposeful lives may be built.
Okay? Accepting our powerlessness over, if we carried it to the depths, the dark side, turn out to be the firm bedrock of which happy and purposeful lives may be built, but we haven't built anything yet. The only thing we've done is accepted that we're powerless and our life has become unmanageable. How easy is that to see with this diagram? All right, now let's go to page 47 in the big book. How long we gonna be going, Scott?
About a half hour.
All right, we'll do this next paragraph and then we'll take a break, okay?
You said 47?
47.
Big deal.
So here's some more of the self-examination, the self-searching, and the personal decision, okay? This is step 2 in simplicity. It says we needed to ask ourselves, okay? We need to ask ourselves but one short question. And it's going to be a short answer. It's going to be a yes or no deal. We needed to ask ourselves but one short question. Do I now believe, or am I even willing to believe, that there is a singular power capitalized greater than myself? Then it says, as soon as a man can say that he does believe or is willing to believe, we emphatically assure him that he is on his way. Where are we heading? Spiritual liberation and strength. It has been repeatedly proven among us that upon this simple cornerstone of belief, a wonderfully and effective spiritual structure can be built. So what are we trying to build? A wonderful and effective spiritual structure. But the problem is, we haven't known how. But God, through the 12 steps, is going to teach us precisely how. That makes sense? So now we got a bedrock, and now we got a cornerstone. Okay? Let's just go on a little bit further. Let's go to page 62 in the big book. Everybody good?
Yeah.
We doing good?
Yes, sir.
All right, here's the commitment, okay? We're in the chapter of how it works. The spiritual life is not a theory. We have to, okay? It says, this is the how and why of it. Right up above that, it says, we had to have God's help. Whether you like it or not, somewhere down the road, if you're going to turn this deal around, if you're going to overcome this side over here, you've got to be aided by this side. In your mind, you can reject that as being reality, but it's not going to change the fact that it's still reality. It's not, and it's God's reality. And you can act like it ain't there, but it's still there. You can be self-deceived for the rest of your life if that's what you want to be, and keep cheating yourself and cheating everybody else within your circle of influence. That's your choice. But it says, this is the how and why of it. First of all, we had to quit playing God. Because it didn't work. Our idea did not work, but God's idea did. Then it says, next we decided, here it is, here's the decision, that hereafter in this drama of life, God was going to be our director. In order for us to let God be our director, we got to find out what his directions are. And it says, he is the principal and we are his agents. He is the Father and we are His children. And it says most good ideas are simple, and this concept was the keystone of the new and triumphant, meaning victory, arch to which we pass to freedom. So now we got a keystone. We got a bedrock, we got a cornerstone, and now we got a keystone. And the concept is quit playing God, quit trying to control and manipulate others to your own willful desires, and the list goes on and on and on, and let God be your director. And at top page 63, it says, when we sincerely took such a position, what is the position? It's the commitment to the concept. Quit playing God, it didn't work. Let God be the director, He's the principal, we're His agent, He's the Father, we're His children. Okay, now you gotta ask yourself, who's your daddy? Who's been your daddy? Who do you want to be your daddy in this walk of life? Then here's the deal, top page 63. When we sincerely took such a position, all sorts of remarkable things followed. Why? We had a new employer. Being all powerful, He provided what we needed if we kept close to Him and performed His work well. Then He said, establish on such a footing. So now we got a footing, which is the outside perimeter that holds up the weight of the house, the structure. Established on such a footing, we became less and less interested in our little plans because they just got small. Our little designs, more and more we became interested in seeing what we could contribute to life. So when you become a giver instead of a taker, then you begin to be a receiver of all the stuff right here. The good stuff, the good side. It says, as we felt new power flow in. Now, if y'all ain't felt the new power, you stay here and keep an open mind, you're going to. As we discovered, we could face life successfully. No place to run, no place to hide. As we became conscious of His presence, we began to lose our fear of today, tomorrow, or the hereafter, because we were reborn. So the next, look at the middle paragraph on page 63. It says we were now in step 3. How did we get to step 3? We accepted step 1, we accepted step 2. It says we were now in step 3. Many of us said to our Maker as we understood Him. Maker being capitalized, okay? It said many, it didn't say all. If you don't want to, you don't have to. That's your choice. It says, God, I offer myself to Thee. Remember what we're trying to build, a wonderful and effective spiritual structure. God, I offer myself to Thee to build with me and to do with me as Thy will. You, God, relieve me from the bondage of self, that I may better do Your will. You take away my difficulties. Y'all see it? The victory over my difficulties may bear witness. So I can be a good agent or a good representative over here. May bear witness to those I would help Thy power. Y'all notice them in capital letters? Thy love. Notice them capital letters? And Thy what? And that's the 3 in 1. Y'all see it? He says, may I do Thy will always. He said, we thought well before taking this step, making sure that we were ready to at last abandon ourselves utterly to Him. So after seeing yourself on this side, the question is, how can you not be ready? Unless you wanna be used as an instrument to fulfill the purpose of the dark side for the rest of your life. This side over here wants us to have a wonderful life. This side over here wants us to be miserably ineffective. Okay? All right, now, what we've just done, I'm gonna do this and then we're gonna take a break. Anybody that wants to, repeat this third step prayer after me. We're gonna do the single version and then we're gonna do the we version, okay? Like a marriage ceremony, y'all repeat this prayer after me. Y'all ready? God,
God,
I offer myself to thee.
I offer myself to thee
To build with me.
to build with me
And to do with me.
and to do with me
As thy will.
as thy will.
Relieve me of the bondage of self.
Relieve me of the bondage of self,
That I may better do your will.
that I may better do your will.
Take away my difficulties.
Take away my
That
difficulties,
victory over them
to victory over them.
may bear witness
May bear witness
to those that I would help.
to those that I would help.
Thy power,
Thy power,
thy love,
thy love,
and thy way of life.
thy way of life.
May I do thy will always.
May I do thy will always.
Now we're gonna do it as a team and then we're gonna take a break. Y'all ready? The we version. God,
God,
we offer ourselves to thee
we offer ourselves to thee
to build with us
to build with us
and to do with us
and to do with us
thy will.
as thy will.
Relieve us of the bondage of self
Relieve us of the bondage of self,
that we may better do thy will.
that we may better do thy
Take
will.
away our difficulties.
Take away our
That
difficulties,
victory over them
the victory over them
may bear witness
may bear witness
to those that we would help.
to those that we would help.
Your power,
Your power,
your love,
your love,
and your way of life.
your way of life.
May we do your will always,
May we do your will
one
always,
day at a time.
one day at a
Take
time.
a break. Oh, this word, these words right here, okay? And we're gonna talk about humility a little bit. Now, how many of y'all have been in the habit before you got here of taking your inventory? Most people have been in the habit of taking everybody else's inventory, right? Now we wanna start taking our own. So, let's go to page 72 in the 12 and 12. Actually, let's look at the last line on the bottom of 71. Remember, I'm gonna refresh our memory just a little bit. We talked about spiritual liberation and strength off of page 21 in the 12 and 12. And it talks about a spiritual structure can be built, okay? Then we talked about that again on page 47 in the big book. And then we did the third step prayer and we offered ourselves to God to build with us, okay? It says, true, most of us thought good character was desirable. But obviously good character was something one needed to get on with the business of being self-satisfied. With a proper display of honesty and morality, we stand a better chance of getting what we really wanted. But whenever we had to choose, that's the power of choice. Whenever we had to choose between character and comfort, the character building was lost in the dust. After what we thought was happiness, and that's where these priorities come in. Our society has taught us, and nobody wants to appreciate it, you need to get you a good education so you can get you a good job, so you can have, so you can have, so you can have, so you can have. True or false?
True.
Okay. seldom did we look at character building as something desirable in itself. Something we would like to strive for, where our instinctual needs were met enough. We never thought of making honesty, tolerance, and true love of man and God the daily basis of living. So we were on the wrong basis. And it never occurred to us that we need to change in order for us to become truly happy and respected. Because we've been chasing this materialistic world our entire life. Because if we had this, we could get what we thought we wanted. But that was the self-deception. Those were the lies that we were believing. Lies become truth, and truth becomes lies. It says this lack of anchorage. So, you know, when the storms of life come, if you're not anchored to the right source of strength, then you're in trouble. This lack of anchor to any permanent values. All these are temporary values. We want permanent values. That's why the desires are there, and that's why the motives are there. So if I ask y'all a question, how many of y'all been through treatment before? How many of y'all went through the steps when you went to treatment? And then we let up. Okay? So, if I ask y'all, let's see, if I ask y'all to memorize the chapter 5, how it works, which is from page 58 to page 71. And I told y'all that I was going to come back this time next month, and everybody that could quote chapter 5 of the big book, I will give you $100,000. Now, how many of y'all would do your best to memorize chapter 5? You know why? Motivation. To our best people in the treatment centers. How many of y'all would go to the steps if I told you after you went through the steps with some spiritual minded person that I would give you $500? How many of y'all would go to the steps? Oh man, they was, man. You know why? Motivation. But money can't buy this gift. But this gift can be received through your willingness and your honesty based on your desires. Does that make sense? All right, now let's read the rest of it. Y'all ever heard this? You know the tree by the fruit that it bears? You ever heard that? What kind of fruit you been bearing? What kind of tree you been? What kind of tree do you want to be? Did y'all see anything missing over here? You see all this food being served over here? What kind of food you been feeding this side over here? So what I do, the way I look at a healthy 12-step meeting is we come to the table and the food is being prepared. How many of y'all have partaken of some pretty spiritual food this morning? Okay. And so what we're doing is we are, in reality, we're destroying this side over here. And we're advancing this side over here through the words that are in this literature, the words that are being spoken, and the Spirit of light intercedes on our behalf, and each individual in this room hears what's being said in his own language based on your circumstances. Everybody's thought about something different just over and over and over again, and our mind has just been racing, hasn't it? As a rule, going from one place to the next place, and we've been doing some self-searching. What's really happening is the spirit of the light side is searching our minds and processing this stuff out. And what we're doing in reality is we're uncovering and discovering and discarding some of this stuff. And it's happening in the real world. It's happening this morning. Can we accept that? Because when you see something different, a light bulb goes off in your head. Y'all agree with that? Like a light bulb going off in your head. And when light hits the darkness, you know what happens to the darkness? It's got to go. It has no choice. All right, let's go back to the paragraph. This lack of anchorage to any permanent values, this blindness to the true purpose of our lives produced another bad result. For just so long as we were convinced that we could live exclusively by our own individual strength and intelligence, for just that long was a working phase in a singular, higher power, capitalized, impossible. This was true even when we believed that God existed. We could actually have earnest religious beliefs which remained barren because we were still trying to play God ourselves. As long as we place self-reliance first, a genuine reliance upon a singular, higher power, capitalized, was out of the question. And I read all that to read this statement right here. The basic ingredient of all humility is a desire to seek and do God's will was missing. So what was missing was the desire. Because we've been caught up in the desires of the natural by misusing our God-given instincts. Not a question of security, but what or who are you putting your faith in? Is it temporary or is it permanent? Now, the matter of the social instinct, we belong in society. But when we highlight our own pride and our own accomplishments, instead of giving credit to the one who gives us the ability to accomplish whatever, we got everything backwards. Does that make sense? All right, now let's back up to the bottom of page 57. Three lines up from the bottom. Step 5 was the answer. It was the beginning of true kinship with man and with God. The dark side don't want us to have true kinship with our fellow man. He does not want us to have true kinship with God. Y'all believe that? So when we do step 5, we admit to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature, which is the nature of our wrong, which in simplicity is the nature of the dark side. I'm going to write this down. I want to encourage y'all to look this up. This word right here, mean, which is what I call our formula, are going to teach us how. I'll just write down a few places where I know this word right here is being used in our literature. Page 15, page 34, page 57, page 64, page 76, page 88, page 96, page 98, 114, 122. At different places where this word is mentioned in our literature, okay? Actually, on page 122, it says, money gradually became our servant and not our master. It became a means of exchanging love and service with those about us. But money is supposed to be our servant and not our God. That make sense?
What page was that?
122. Yeah, let's just jump over that right quick. If y'all want to do that, hold your finger on 57. We're coming back to 57. Look at the third line from the top. And see, here's what the dark side wants you to think. If I just had about $100,000, or if I had about $150,000, if I had about $50,000 so I could get out of debt, I'd be okay. But at the top of 122, third line down, it said it didn't matter too much. It doesn't mean it don't matter. It didn't matter too much what our material condition was, but it did matter what our spiritual condition was. Money gradually became our servant and not our master. It became a means of exchanging love and service with those about us, which is our circle of influence. When, with God's help, we calmly accepted our lot, then we found that we could live at peace with ourselves and show others, which is actions, who still suffered the same fears, that they could get over them too. We found that freedom from fear was more important than freedom from want. So our objective is to get set free. Okay? All right, let's go back to page 57. We doing good?
Yes, sir.
All right. It says this vital step, exposing the nature, was also the means by which we began to get the feeling that we could be forgiven no matter what we had thought or done. How many of y'all believe that God will forgive us? How many of us have a hard time depending upon His perfect forgiveness? All right, we got to get there. Okay? Naturally. How could you not naturally want to beat up on yourself when you think about all the stuff you've done? That's where the serenity prayer kicks in. God grant me the serenity to accept things I can't do nothing about. It was what it was. The water just flowed under the bridge, just flowed under the bridge. And you can't unscramble scrambled eggs. So we gotta learn how to accept what is. Let go of what was. And have faith in what will be. And we try to accomplish that one day at a time. Actually, it's one step at a time, 1 second at a time. Make sense? Top page 58. Often it is while working on this step with our sponsors with an S on it, or spiritual advisors with an S on it, that we first felt truly able to forgive others, no matter how deeply we felt they had wronged us. Our moral inventory had persuaded us that all-around forgiveness was desirable. I mean, y'all believe that? Y'all believe that all-around forgiveness is desirable? It's got to be desirable unless you want to be in bondage. And you may not be there yet, but you can get there. I'm reciprocal free. Because I took the right steps. Spiritual liberation. But it is only when we resolutely tackle step 5 that we inwardly knew we'd be able to receive forgiveness and give it to. So freely we have received, freely we give. So when we receive forgiveness, we pass it on to somebody else. That make sense? Let's go to the bottom of 77. 4 lines up from the bottom. Where it says, this reopening of emotional wounds. Y'all know about the emotional wounds? We've been wounded. We're going to expose it so we can have some scars and let it heal up. Battle scars. Make sense? This reopening of emotional wounds, some old, some perhaps forgotten, and some still painfully festering, will at first look like a purposeless and pointless piece of surgery. You got to know who the surgeon is too. But if a willing start is made, then the great advantages of doing this will so quickly reveal themselves that the pain will be lessened as one obstacle after another melts away. So when the sunlight of the Spirit hits those obstacles that are in our path, they're going to melt them. These obstacles, however, are very difficult. What did we say in the 3rd step prayer? Take away my difficulty. These obstacles, however, are very difficult. The first and one of the most difficult has to do with forgiveness. These obstacles, however, are very real. Let me say it right. The first and one of the most difficult has to do with forgiveness. Now I want you to think about how powerful this mind is. The moment we ponder a twisted, look at our family right here. The moment we ponder a twisted or broken relationship, our emotions get defensive. And when our emotions get defensive with somebody else, it stirs up emotions inside them. And then the human being becomes the battleground for those bedeviled emotions or the instincts that are colliding in a human being. Does that make sense? The moment we ponder a twisted or broken relationship with another person, our emotions go on offenses to escape looking at the wrongs we've done another. We resentfully focus on the wrong they've done us. This is especially true if they have, in fact, behaved badly at all. Triumphantly, we seize upon their misbehavior as a perfect excuse for minimizing or forgetting our own behavior. So it's what I call having selective amnesia. Because we'll shout when somebody hurts us, well, it just ain't right. It just ain't right. It just ain't right. Like we've been perfect all our life. And the book says right here we need to fetch ourselves up sharply because it doesn't make much sense when a real tall pot calls the kettle black. Let's remember that alcoholics are not the only ones bedeviled by sick emotions. So it's the bedeviled emotions and they're sick emotions. Moreover, it is usually a fact that our behavior when drinking has aggravated the defects of others, and you don't have to be drinking to aggravate the defects of somebody else. You can just be an arrogant little whatever, and you can aggravate the defects of others. If that's your motives, keep doing it, okay? We repeatedly strained the patience of our best friend to a snapping point and have brought out the very worst in those who didn't think much of us to begin with. In many instances, we are really dealing with fellow sufferers, people whose woes we have increased. No question. If we are now about to ask for forgiveness for ourselves, why shouldn't we start out by forgiving them one and all? I mean, it's like a no-brainer. If I want to be free, forgiveness is not an option. If I want to be bound by the dark side, then I hang on to the yeah buts and the if onlys, and you just don't understand. Let me tell you what they did. But when you review your own scorecard, make an accurate, unsparing self-survey of the human wreckage you've left in your way, then you'll be willing to do whatever it takes to overcome the power of this side so you can become this side. Okay, all right, let's take a break. Hey Pam, I quit. What's up? So what I want to do is, let's go to page 98 into 12 and 12. And what I want y'all to think about is practicing 86, 87, and 88 in the big book. Y'all get that mindset. Practice, practice, practice. When you practice something, you increase your skills. Okay? And what we want to do is increase our skills against the schemes of the dark side, become more aware of its mode of operation. And we've been talking about it. How many of y'all believe this side over here wants to forgive? How many of y'all believe this side over here don't want us to forgive? Wants to keep us in bondage. Okay? So, at top page 98, here was the missing link in my life. There's a direct linkage. You know what a linkage is? Something that hooks something up. A lot of us been disconnected, okay? There's a direct linkage among self-examination, meditation, and prayer. Taken separately, these practices can bring much relief and benefit. But when they're logically related and interwoven, the result is an unshakable foundation for life. Now and then we may be granted a glimpse of that ultimate reality, which is God's kingdom. And you know what that is? Inside us. And we will be comforted and assured that our own destiny in that realm will be secure so long as we, what's that next word?
Try.
Try. However haltingly, to find and do the will of our Creator. So we gotta search for it. And in simplicity, what we're trying to do is do the next right thing. If you do the next right thing, then you'll be seeking to do the will of your Creator. Does that make sense? And the last thing we want to do is hurt anybody else. Haven't we done our share of this? So look at the next paragraph. As we have seen, self-searching. How many of y'all been doing some self-searching? Self-searching is the means by which we bring new vision. How many of y'all getting a new pair of glasses? New vision. New action. Emphasize the word new. And new grace to bear upon the dark and negative side, y'all see it? Of our nature's plural. So we got the dark side versus the light side. We've got the desires of the dark side, which stems from the misuse of our God-given instincts, versus the desires of the spirit man. And they're warring against each other, and the battlefield is in the mind. So what we're gonna be given is we're gonna be given some tools to work with. Now y'all think about the self-examination, the meditation, and prayer. Now see this ring up here? This is a 3-strand ring. These strands are logically related and interwoven, and that's a solid structure. Now if they were separate, you'd be able to bend them. But since they're logically related and interwoven, that results in an unshakable foundation for life. And what I want to do is, in a very practical way, I want to go to page 88 in the big book. And here's what it says. It works. It really does. I'm going to tell you what it is. It is discipline. The next paragraph says, we alcoholics are undisciplined. We could say the majority of mankind is probably undisciplined. Y'all agree with that?
Sure.
We could just say human beings are undisciplined, so we can umbrella us all in there. So we let God, a choice, discipline us in the simple way we've just outlined. So discipline is our trainer. It's one of the means that we become trained. Okay? Now let's go back to page 84 in the big book. So they just outlined a simple formula for us to become disciplined. So in that paragraph where it says, this thought brings us to step 10, y'all may not know it, but we on step 10, we on step 11, we on step 12. We're doing a whole bunch of these steps, okay? We're doing bits and pieces of all of them. How many of y'all believe that? Thing started off with a messenger named Ebby carrying a message of truth to his friend Bill Wilson. And so in the big paragraph, the word continue is going to be mentioned 4 times in this one paragraph. So it says, this thought brings us to step 10, which suggests we continue to take, what's that next word?
Personal inventory.
Whose inventory do it need to be taken? And continue to set right any new mistakes as we cleaned up the past. Okay? We've entered the world of the Spirit. Remember where we said we were reborn? We've entered the world of the Spirit, so our next function is to grow in understanding. How many of y'all have gained some understanding today?
Yes.
And effectiveness, okay? As iron sharpens iron, so does one brother sharpen another brother. It says, this is not an overnight matter. It continues for a lifetime. So it's a journey. So it says, continue to watch for. Think about defense, okay? Selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, and fear. When these crop up, they're going to crop up in our mind. You got it? We call on the gardener. What does it say? When these crop up, we ask God at once. There's our prayer. Weapons of warfare. We ask God at once to remove them. We discuss them with someone else immediately. We make amends quickly if we've harmed anybody. And then we resolutely turn our thoughts to somebody we can help. Love and tolerance of others is our code. So they just outline of something for us to be watching for throughout the course of the day. And it tells us exactly what to do when it crops up. And in most cases, 3 out of 4 ain't bad, but if you don't turn your talk to somebody you can help, then that dark side will take over you again in your mind. Make sense? All right, you jump over to page 85, where it says, it is easy to let up. There again, that's a choice. On the spiritual program of action and rest on our laws, which means past accomplishments. Well, I used to do this, I used to do that, and it's real easy for you to go through this place and leave here and just stop. Like it's not a calling or something. You understand that? It says we are heading for trouble if we choose to let up. It means collision courses are coming. It says what we're not cured about, cause listen, what we really have is a daily reprieve, continuance on the maintenance of our spiritual condition. So we got to maintain and grow our spiritual condition. Then it says every day, one day at a time, is a day when we must carry the vision of God's will into all our activities, and that vision is, how can I best serve thee? Thy will, not mine, be done. And many times over, we'll let the good be the enemy of the best. And it says these are thoughts which must go with us constantly. We can exercise our willpower along these lines. All we wasted is the proper use of the will. Now let's go to the top of page 86. So when we retire at night, y'all see that? So we offered ourselves to God to build with us and to do with us. So when we retire at night, we constructively review our day. And the very 4 things that we're supposed to be watching for on page 84, he's fixing to ask us if we were any of those things. It says, were we, what's the first one? Resentful? Were we selfish? Were we
Dishonest.
Were we
Afraid.
Do we own a have we come something to ourselves that should be discussed with another person? When? At once. What's the next one? Were we kind and loving toward all? Yeah, except for the guy that cut me off in traffic. Yeah, except for the people that was in line at Walmart. Yeah, except for the woman that got my order messed up at McDonald's. Yeah, except for. What's the next one?
What could he have done better?
Okay, what we want to do is increase our skills. What's the next one?
Are we thinking of ourselves most of the time?
If you're thinking about yourself most of the time, or are you thinking about what you can contribute to life? You know what happens when you become a giver? You set yourself up to be a receiver. And what we've been doing is taking. And now we want to start giving, so we can start receiving. But here's where the dark side wants to take it. What's the next segment? We must be careful not to drift into worry, fear, remorse, morbid reflections. Because if we drift off into that, then we're not going to be near as effective. Must be careful not to drift into worry, remorse, morbid reflection, for that would diminish our usefulness, which means we wouldn't be near as effective as we could be by drifting off into all that stuff. There's the battlefield of the mind. Then it says, after making our review, we ask God's forgiveness. The implication is we're going to fall short on a daily basis. We ask for God's forgiveness and inquire upon Him what corrective measures should be taken. So we want to correct all this stuff. Actually, we want to learn daily to spot, admit, and correct it. Okay, in the next paragraph, it says, on awakening, let us, that's a choice, think about the 24 hours ahead. We consider our plans for the day, but before we begin considering our plans for the day, we ask God to do what? Direct our thinking. And then we get real specific with God about our motives. We ask especially that our thinking be divorced from what's listed first. What's in the heart of it. Dishonest. Self-seeking motives. It said, under these conditions, what are the conditions? I've invited the director in on my life. Remember what we read on page 62? He is the principal, we are his agent, he's the father, we are his children. It said in this drama of life, God was going to be our director. So we asked God to direct our thinking. Then it said, under these conditions, we can employ our mental faculties with assurance. That's faith. Not in us, but in him. For after all God gave us brains to use, said our thought life will be placed on a much higher plane when our thinking is cleared of wrong motives. Motives. Freedom, bondage. Desires, desires. Values, values. Objectives, objectives. Ambitions, ambitions. Priorities, priorities. Make sense? Now, look over to page 87 for time's sake. How many of y'all believe God wants us to be inspired? Enthusiastic, energetic.
Yep.
How many of y'all believe the dark side don't want us to have nothing to do with that? So God draws people to him through people that are inspired, that are enthusiastic, that are energized with his power, his love, and his way. And on page 87, it says, we usually conclude up here a meditation with a prayer that we be shown all throughout the day what our next step is to be. The greatest exercise you'll ever have is one step at a time, walking with God. And that we be given whatever we need to take care of any such problems. And then we ask especially for freedom from self-will. When a problem comes your way, the temptation is to jump in self-will. Try to figure it out. True or false? And every problem, every temptation, no matter what the temptation is, or no matter what the problem is, it's going to give an opportunity for both spiritual sides. That make sense? It says we may ask for ourselves, if others can we help. If you pray for wisdom, you pray for insight, you pray for understanding, you pray that God teach you and show you his ways, you pray that he would write his words on your heart and your mind. It's going to help you, but it's going to help you within your circle of influence be real effective. Okay? Bottom of page 87. As we go through the day, we pause. What's that next word? When? When agitated or doubtful? Any of y'all been agitated or doubtful today? Maybe not as much as yesterday, because we've been doing some heavy stuff here today. We ain't been thinking about all that other stuff. We've been focusing on what's going on here, haven't we? As we go through the day, we pause when agitated or doubtful and ask, who you going to ask? I know who I'm going to ask for the right thought or the right action. And here's the big deal. We constantly remind ourselves we're no longer running the show. Humbly saying to ourselves many times each day, thy will be done. We are then. You know how we got to the then? We prepared ourselves in advance for the when. Unexpected problems are coming our way. You can expect them. You don't have to dread them, but they're coming. We're dealing much less danger of excitement, worry, fear, anger, self-pity, foolish decisions. We become much more efficient. We do not tire so easily, for we are not burning up energy foolishly as we did when we were trying to arrange life to suit ourselves. It works, it really does. I can tell you this. It takes discipline for you to be on guard against that selfish, self-centered nature. It takes discipline for you to be watching for the selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, and the fear It takes discipline for you to carry a vision of God's will into all your activities. It takes discipline for you to go to bed at night and review your day. It takes discipline for you to get up in the morning and invite God in on your life. It takes discipline to stop, pause, and pray when you get agitated or doubtful. It takes discipline to remind yourself you're not running this deal. Go to page 68 in the book. Let's try to get this thing to a closure. Second paragraph. Perhaps there's a better way. We think so. What you think? Perhaps there's a better way than all this over here. What you think? We know it, don't we? Perhaps there's a better way. We think so, for we're now on a different basis. The basis of trusting and relying upon God. We trust infinite God rather than our finite self. It's a process learning how to trust the process, okay? It's a process learning how to trust. He says, we're in the world to play the role he assigned. So he's assigned me a role, and he's assigned each and every one of us a role. And the truth of the matter is, you're either going to accept your assignment or you're going to reject it. And if you reject it, you can book. The consequences are coming. But if you accept it, you're going to get some rewards. Then he said, go back to the book with him. Just to the extent that we do what we think he would have us and humbly rely on him, does he enable us to match calamity with serenity? So who's our enabler? God. Then he says, we never apologize to anyone for depending upon our Creator. We can laugh at those who think spirituality is the way of weakness. Paradoxically, it is the way of strength. The verdict of the ages, the bottom line from the beginning of time, is all men of faith have courage. Why? They trusted God. We never apologize for God. Instead, we let him demonstrate through us what he can do. We ask him to remove our fear and direct our attention into what he would have us be, full of faith. And once we commit to outgrow fear. So much more we can talk about, y'all. We're just gonna have to narrow it down. Let's go to page 124 right quick. I'll give y'all a message of hope, okay, to try to close this thing out. I want to say this, any wisdom that comes out of my mouth did not originate in me, okay? Don't give me the credit, give God the credit. Okay? Page 124, it says, Henry Ford once made a wise remark. The wisdom didn't come from Henry, it come through Henry. To the effect that experience is a thing of supreme value in life. That's true only if one is willing to turn the past to good account. Are you willing to turn your past to good account? We grow by our willingness to face and rectify errors and convert them into assets. Now, if we convert all our errors into assets, how many assets we gonna have? A bunch of them. All right, now drop down to, in the next paragraph, about halfway down, where it says, showing others who suffer, right in the middle of the page. Y'all see it? Showing others, which is action, who suffer, how we were given help is the very thing that makes life seem to work well to us now. Cling to the thought that in God's hands, the dark past is the greatest possession you have. It's the key to life and happiness for others. With that key, because we were willing to put our dark past in God's hands, God gave us victory over it, or he's given us victory over it. With that key, we can avert death and misery for other people. That's a pretty powerful statement, isn't it? And what that means to me is my dark past don't possess me, I possess it. Over a period of time, God gave me authority over it. The world can't give it, and the world can't take it away. freely we have received, freely give. Go to page 561. Now look at what we're picking to read as a personal letter from God to me and from God to us. You may not look at it that way. Page 561. So it says, to those now in, I'm gonna ask you a question. Are you in or out?
In.
See, you gotta make that decision. You're in this side, serving in this army, or you in this side, serving in this side. To those now in this poll, go back to the book with me. Alcoholics Anonymous has made the difference between misery and sobriety, and often the difference between life and death. AA can mean just as much to uncounted alcoholics not yet reached. That's our circle of influence. Therefore, no society of men and women ever had a more urgent need for continuous effectiveness and permanent unity. We alcoholics see that we must work together, hang together, else most of us are finally die alone. Okay, now let's go to page 276. And here's what I believe about God and how He fashioned us, how He created us. Where it says, now there's a sense of belonging, y'all see that? Of being wanted, of being needed, and loved. How many of y'all want to feel belonged? Have that sense of belonging. We need y'all. We need every foot soldier that walks in these doors to stay in here with us. Know who our enemy is. Know how he operates. And he says, in exchange for a bottle and a hangover, we've been given the keys of the kingdom. Now the question is, what you gonna do with those keys? Are you gonna use them? Or are you gonna throw them away? You know whose choice that is? That's yours. If it was mine, everybody would stay in here with us. And it wouldn't take long for our circle of influence to be used as we become transformed from this side to this side. And we would turn this side upside down and inside out. With His power, and His love, and His love. And I hope everybody got convicted today of what this movement's all about. In the service manual, it says freedom under God to grow in His likeness and image, will ever be the quest about God. The very last statement in the service manual, it says, to a man, we of AA believe that our freedom to serve is truly the freedom of which we live, the freedom in which we have our very being. Y'all been a great bunch of guys to work with. I appreciate everything. Y'all been very attentive, took some good notes, and let's just see what God's got in mind. Anybody got any questions? All right, let's circle up. Come on up here with me, guys.